who wrote President Trump's inauguration address, White House senior advisor Stephen Miller. Good evening, Stephen.
Great to be on your show. First, though, and I hate to start with a correction, but President Trump wrote his own inaugural address. But and I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but we're here at the White House tonight and trying to do work on behalf of the American people.
Well, we appreciate that correction. I don't know where that came from, but thank you. Let me ask you this, Stephen. Did the White House expect that there would be such a profound reaction to the president's executive action here?
Well, I think that what you're seeing is a small reaction from a small number of people that is outsized in the amount of coverage that it's getting. I think that the overwhelming majority of the American public is concerned about having safe communities, good schools, and good jobs, and doesn't want to have what happened in America, what happened in Nice, France, when a truck mowed over innocent men, women, and children, or what happened in Paris, where gunmen slaughtered hundreds of people, innocents in a theater, or what happened all across the world, everywhere Islamic terrorism strikes. And so they're interested in what we're interested in, which is preventing terrorism from spreading its roots inside the United States of America.
Well, let me ask you this direct question, because it seems that many people are not getting this. Does the ban have anything to do with religion?
No, the ban is applied to 7 countries that the Obama administration has identified as countries of a special risk to the homeland. That was a decision that was made by the Obama administration in 2015 and 2016, and they put in place the first travel restrictions. President Trump has taken decisive action to ensure that those restrictions are expanded while new vetting procedures are put into place. It would be irresponsible to have no restrictions during the 90-day review period and allow terrorists to infiltrate through the old system until new screening measures are put in place, which they will be 3 months from now.
So that tells me, Stephen, that you are not comfortable with the vetting system that is in place, and specifically the vetting system for refugees that I believe starts with the United Nations and involves our State Department.
Well, I'll give you a great example, or a horrifying example, I should say, which is in 2011, 2 Iraqis came through on the refugee program and were subsequently charged for an al-Qaeda plot in Bowling Green, Kentucky, that led the Obama administration to shut down the Iraqi refugee program for 6 full months. By our estimate, there's more than 40 refugees in recent history who have been subsequently implicated in terrorism, and nearly 400 foreign nationals or naturalized foreigners who became U.S. citizens subsequent to their entry who've been implicated in terrorism since 9/11. So it is a very large pool of people that have successfully infiltrated our immigration program. And as we've seen, again, in the recent terror attacks like the Orlando shooting, one individual can cause unimaginable harm. Imagine then what 5, 10, or 15, or 20 people could do coordinating together as they did on 9/11. We don't have the luxury of gambling with the lives of the American people, and we will not gamble with the lives of the American people.
And so is that your answer to those people who say, you know, we've never been attacked by any of the people from these 7 countries, or, you know, the refugees, or right now we're subject more to the lone wolves in this country?
Well, first of all, if you look at the recent terror attacks that have occurred in the United States, there's almost always an immigration nexus. Whether it be in the first generation or in radicalized children of migrants, but there's a pretty steady pattern of an immigration nexus. For instance, you look at the San Bernardino shooting. The shooter traveled overseas and then came back with his bride, who was a foreign national on a fiancé visa.
Right.
And if you remember, beforehand, nobody in our country was talking about fiancé visas. Mm-hmm. You have to be prepared for the threats that haven't happened yet. So people might say, well, you know, there hasn't been an incident from these countries, which is false, by the way, and we could point to examples, but they might say, well, these haven't been the ones that we remember. But the point is, the Obama administration in 2016, based upon changing conditions in these countries, in Libya, in Yemen, in Sudan, determined these would be the places where future threats were likely to emanate. And we're just adopting that recommendation while we do our own review over the next 3 months.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I think what most people don't understand is that no one has the right to enter the United States unless they are a citizen, correct?
100%. And I really want to underscore this point because you played the audio from Senator Schumer, which was inexplicable. No foreign national residing in a foreign country has any constitutional right to demand entry into the United States. There are 7 billion persons in the world. If you were to establish such a right, then you would have absolutely no border and no border control whatsoever. Moreover, as you know, Judge, if you did attach such a right, then that would mean every one of those 7 billion people who is denied the ability to enter the country could then sue in an American court and take money from American taxpayers for having been denied immigration benefits, which would be ludicrous.
It's absurd, and the courts have supported that. And one last point, because there's been a lot of criticism about this, and I'm not even going to get into the fact that, you know, Donald Trump ran on this and he's following through on his promise, because it's stronger than that. You know, there are people who are criticizing and saying, you know, if you're letting in Christians as refugees, you know, it's not fair. But isn't a refugee status heightened if you are a minority, so that if you are a Christian and minority, then you are more entitled to refugee status than another majority religious refugee status?
Well, in fact, Judge, the refugee program has long stipulated that religious persecution is explicit grounds for entry. So this is consistent with the long history of the refugee program to recognize religious persecution. And of course, common sense dictates that victims of Christian genocide carried out against Christian communities in the Middle East, are in an especial danger. And I would note that the humanitarian goal of this executive order is to give priority to people who are in that extremely perilous condition.
Exactly, and again, that's the Christians and the Yazidis.
Right, but not to the exclusion of other people, but recognizing the extreme vulnerability of those who are victims of religious persecution.
All right. Do you have any question that this executive order will withstand constitutional questions?
There's no doubt, zero doubt whatsoever, because it is the power of the federal government of the United States, sole and exclusive power of the United States government to determine who can and cannot enter the United States as a sovereign country, and that is an unquestioned authority, and no court can confer onto the right of a foreign national a guarantee of entrance into the United States of America, and the rulings that have been issued so far have no effect whatsoever on the operation of the executive order and the prevention of the admission of individuals that the executive order says ought to be suspended for the next 90 days.
Well, there's no question. Stephen Miller, the first order of government is the protection of its people. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you, and have a great night.
Thank you. And